What if the most powerful man in your country stopped his motorcade, just to kneel in the dust before a stranger? What if that stranger wasn't really a stranger at all, but the brother he thought he'd lost forever? This isn't a movie. It's not fiction. This is the true story of Captain Ibrahy Trari, the president of Bokhina Fasho, who in the middle of a routine visit made a split-second decision that would change lives. Not just his own, but an entire nation's. When he recognized a homeless man sitting under a mango tree, he didn't turn away. He got out of the car. He got down on one knee. And what followed was a moment so powerful, it silenced a city, stirred millions online, and ignited a movement of healing that continues today. In this story, you'll see what leadership looks like when it meets humanity. You'll see what happens when power remembers its roots, because sometimes the most revolutionary thing a leader can do is remember where he came from. The afternoon sun hung low over Ouagadougou, casting golden beams across the dusty streets and faded shop signs of the Burkinabe capital. The city moved with its usual rhythm, children shouting, motorbikes zipping by, market women balancing baskets with ease. But something unusual was unfolding beneath the heat and noise. Inside a slowly advancing presidential car, President Ibrahy Trari sat still, his gaze drifting out the window far beyond protocol. "Excellency, this stop is not on the schedule," whispered Captain Sawado, eyes flicking to the cluster of street vendors nearby. "I need to see things with my own eyes," Ibrahim replied firmly, his voice resolute but quiet. The car inched forward through a narrow street, heads turning, eyes widening. Murmurs followed them, then waves of surprise. Children sprinted alongside the car, calling out the president's name. Shopkeepers paused mid-sale, but Ibrahim wasn't there for attention. Then he saw him. Under the shade of a mango tree, a man sat slouched, legs stretched out in the dust. His clothes were torn, face thin, skin dulled by hardship. He looked no older than 30, yet life had aged him. Ibrahim's chest tightened. "Stop the car," he said suddenly. The driver hit the brakes. Before the vehicle came to a full halt, Ibrahim flung the door open. His security team moved fast, but he was already stepping out. The man under the tree noticed the commotion. Slowly he raised his head, squinting through the sun. A soldier in uniform approached him, a face half recognized, half doubted. Their eyes locked, time folded in on itself. "Ibra?" the man said, his voice hoarse but filled with something older than memory. Ibrahim froze. Only one person had ever called him that. And that voice, it reached through time and cut through everything. It was him, Adama, his brother. The moment hung in the air like a held breath. Ibrahim stood frozen in the dust, surrounded by a stunned silence. His security detail remained alert, forming a loose circle, but even they were momentarily disarmed by the surreal intimacy unfolding before them. "Ebra," the man had said. Not president, not excellency. Just that one name said like a prayer from long ago. Adama Ibrahim dropped to one knee, his uniform brushing the dirt, the weight of his title momentarily cast aside. His voice trembled as he spoke the name aloud, confirming the truth that his heart already knew. "Adama, my brother, it's really you." The man blinked, as if trying to wake from a dream. Tears welled up in his eyes, carving clean lines down his dusty face. Without thinking, he reached forward, and then they embraced. The cameras clicked. The phones recorded, but in that instant, none of it mattered. They weren't president and homeless man, leader and lost citizen. They were just two brothers, rediscovering each other in the unlikeliest of places, a sidewalk under a mango tree. "Thought you were dead," Ibrahim whispered, pulling back just slightly, his hands still gripping Adama's arms, as if afraid he might vanish. "And I never thought I'd see you again," Adama replied, voice cracking, emotion raw. "Not like this, Captain." Sawado moved closer, but Ibrahim raised a hand. "No orders, no protocol, just presence." "Come with me," he said gently, offering his hand. Adama hesitated. He looked down at his tattered clothes, the grime under his nails, the weight of shame written into every tired line on his face. "I can't," he said. "I'm nothing now, Ibra. You're the president. "You are my brother," Ibrahim said. "That will never change." And with that, he lifted Adama up from the ground, not as a favor, but as a homecoming. The presidential car moved through the streets of Ouagadougou once more, but this time it carried something deeper than a motorcade. In the back seat sat two men, once inseparable, now strangers rediscovering the bridge between who they were and who they'd become. Adama remained silent, his eyes darting from the tinted windows to the polished leather seat beneath him. His hands fidgeted in his lap, unfamiliar with comfort. Beside him, Ibrahim watched quietly, not as a head of state but as a brother struggling to recognize the boy he once knew in this hollowed, sunburnt figure. "Do you remember Kugu?" Ibrahim asked softly, breaking the silence. "The baobab tree, the ball we made from string and rags?" Adama gave a slow nod, a ghost of a smile tugging at the corners of his cracked lips. "You kicked it over the fence, and we never found it again." "Mama Haicha made us another one the next day," Ibrahim said. "She always said boys who play together stay together." The mention of her name seemed to bring color back to Adama's face. "She never treated me like I didn't belong. After my parents died, she gave me more than a home. She gave me a place to belong." Ibrahim looked down at his hands. "She fed us. From the same bowl," he said. "She told us that if two people eat together, their souls are tied." The city faded outside the window as the brothers were pulled deeper into the gravity of memory, shared punishments, laughter by the fire, whispered dreams under mosquito nets. "Why didn't I look for you?" Ibrahim whispered, mostly to himself. Adama didn't answer with blame. Instead, he placed a hand gently on his brother's shoulder, because life carried us both away. But it carried us back, too. The car turned toward the palace gates, but inside, time had already turned backward and begun to heal. Inside the quiet of the presidential car, Adama's voice began to rise gently, his words uneven like stepping on stones across a river. The sound of the engine hummed low beneath their conversation. "After you left for military school," he began, eyes fixed on the blur of buildings outside, "Mama Haicha got sick. I was still in school then, but I had to stop. I worked the fields. Anything to keep food on the table." His voice cracked. "When she died, everything fell apart. There was no one else, no papers, no help. I tried to survive." Ibrahim listened, his heart tightening with every sentence. He pictured Adama, once strong, curious, full of energy, reduced to surviving in silence. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he asked. "You were gone, training, overseas. I didn't even know where to write. And after a while, I stopped expecting a reply." Adama rolled up his sleeve, revealing a long, dark scar. "There was a fire. My little bike repair shop, gone. My tools, my savings, even my ID. Without that, I was nobody. You become invisible." Ibrahim reached out and gently took his brother's worn hands, feeling the calluses, the quiet history embedded in the skin. "How long have you been living on the street?" 2 years, maybe 3. You lose track when every day feels the same. I found shelter under roofs when I could, sometimes just cardboard." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was heavy with unspoken grief. "I didn't want you to see me like this," Adama said. "The brother of the president, living like a stray dog." "You are not a stray," Ibrahim said, voice thick. "You are my brother, not just by name, not just by memory, but by soul." And for the first time since they left that dusty tree, Adama allowed himself to cry, not from pain, but from finally being seen. The car rolled through the iron gates of the presidential compound, a place of order, protocol, and polished marble. But inside that vehicle, it felt like anything but official. Ibrahim watched his brother, thin, uncertain, worn by the street, as the palace staff snapped to attention, unaware of who the quiet passenger beside their leader truly was. Adama looked out the window, visibly overwhelmed. "I never thought I'd step foot in here, not even in my dreams." "You're not a guest," Ibrahim said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're home." As the car came to a halt, Captain Sawado approached, eyes filled with questions. "Should we prepare?" "The guest suite, sir?" Ibrahim turned to him, his tone firm but respectful. "He is not a guest, Captain. He is my brother. and I trust you will treat him as such. Not a word to the press. This is between us." That evening, Ibrahim moved quickly. Orders were given with precision. "Have the private medical team ready in my quarters within 15 minutes. Keep the staff minimal and discreet." In the guest chamber, simple but elegant, Adama sat on the edge of the bed, his fingers gently brushing the clean linen, as if it might disappear if he touched it too hard. "You don't have to do all this," he murmured. "I'm fine." "Let the doctors decide," Ibrahim said. "You're not fine, and we start healing today." The checkup confirmed what was already visible: malnutrition, untreated infections, fatigue etched into his very bones. Ibrahim read the medical report in silence, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the paper. "We begin treatment immediately," he said. "Food, rest, dignity." That night, after Adama had fallen asleep under soft, clean sheets, Ibrahim retreated to his private study. He opened an old leather notebook, pulling out a photo faded by time. Two boys, arms slung around each other, standing in front of a clay home, smiling with the innocent certainty that the world would never pull them apart. Staring at it now, Ibrahim made a silent vow. "I failed you once. Never again." Morning came slowly to the palace, sunlight pouring through the tall windows like a quiet blessing. Adama woke in a bed softer than anything he had touched in years. For a few seconds, he didn't move. He simply stared at the ceiling, half waiting for it all to vanish, but it didn't. A tray sat on the bedside table, warm bread, fresh fruit, coffee. Next to it, a small vase held wildflowers, the kind that used to grow around their village in Kugu. That detail caught his breath. Ibrahim remembered. When the door opened, Ibrahim stepped in without his medals, wearing a simple shirt. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," Adama answered, sitting up. They spoke little at breakfast, but the silence was warm, not awkward. It was the kind of silence that comes when presence is enough. Later that morning, Ibrahim convened an emergency meeting. Ministers, advisors, aides all gathered, unsure why. Ibrahim stood before them, not with anger or orders, but something deeper. "Yesterday, life reminded me of something we forget too easily," he said. "That behind every statistic is a soul, behind every policy, a family, behind every leader, a story." He told them about Adama, not as a headline, as a human being. He admitted his own guilt, his blind spots, his shame. "If this can happen to my own brother," he said, his voice low, "how many others have been forgotten by this country? How many families torn apart by poverty, migration, crisis?" The room was still. Then, without theatrics, Ibrahim laid down his plan. "We will create a National Family Reunification Program, a real effort to find the missing, heal broken ties, and give people the dignity of belonging again." For Adama, healing had begun with food, safety, and kindness. For Ibrahim, healing had begun with truth, and for the nation, healing would begin with action. Days passed and Adama began to regain strength. His body, nourished and rested, responded to care it hadn't known in years. But something else was changing too. His spirit. No longer just a man pulled from the streets, Adama was beginning to feel something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. One quiet morning he approached Ibrahim, his voice steady but unsure. "I can't just stay here while you run a country. I need to do something. I need to earn this second chance." Ibrahim smiled knowingly. "I was hoping you'd say that." The next day they drove to a neglected part of the city where a crumbling colonial-era building stood surrounded by scaffolding. Workers moved with purpose. "We're restoring this place," Ibrahim explained, "to become a center for vulnerable youth, street kids, orphans, those who live like you once did." Adama looked around, the weight of it sinking in. "What do you want me to do here?" "Liad," Ibrahim said. "Be the heart of this project, not in title, but in truth. You know their lives, you know the streets. No one can reach them like you can." Adama hesitated. "But I have no diploma, no training." "You have experience," Ibrahim replied. "That's what these kids need most. The rest we'll teach. You won't be alone." In the weeks that followed, Adama threw himself into the project. He met with educators, social workers, even helped paint the walls. The work was hard, but it lit something in him that hunger and shame had nearly extinguished. And 1 month later, in front of a small crowd, Ibrahim placed a hand on Adama's shoulder and said, "Today, we name you Assistant Coordinator of the Hope Center, not because of who your brother is, but because of what you've done." That night, Adama stood in the unfinished hall and whispered to himself, "I belong here." He wasn't just rebuilding a building, he was rebuilding himself. 1 year later, the Hope Center was more than just a building. It was a movement. Over 100 vulnerable youth now called it a sanctuary. It had become a place of second chances, and at the heart of it all stood Adama. No longer a forgotten man, but a symbol of resilience. On the anniversary of that fateful reunion beneath the mango tree, the center hosted a small ceremony. Ibrahim stood quietly at the back of the hall, dressed simply, watching his brother take the stage with steady confidence. "When I was found," Adama said, "I had nothing, no name, no place, no hope. But my brother reminded me that identity is not something we lose. It's something we carry within us, waiting to be remembered." He paused, letting the silence settle. "If I can rise again, so can thousands of others. This center is not about us. It's about all of you who believe change is possible." The crowd erupted in applause. Ibrahim's eyes welled with pride. That same week, the National Family Reunification Program reported its 5,000th successful case. Families torn apart by migration, poverty, and war were finding each other again. Communities began organizing their own efforts to find the lost and honor the forgotten. Later that evening, away from the noise, the two brothers sat in their favorite garden corner beneath a young baobab tree. Ibrahim handed Adama a small box. Inside were 2 silver pendants shaped like the tree. On each was engraved in their mother tongue, "Forever United." "I made them from the old coins we used to collect," Ibrahim said. Adama smiled and reached into his pocket. He handed Ibrahim a faded school notebook, one they had shared as boys. Inside was a drawing, 2 children holding the flag of Bokhina Fasho. "I kept it through everything," he said. "It reminded me that once someone loved me." Nearby, children sang a song they had written about brotherhood. The brothers stood side by side, listening. This wasn't just a story of reunion. It was the rebirth of a nation's soul. Some stories live in books, others live in history. But this story lives in the eyes of every person who has ever felt forgotten. In every sibling separated by hardship, in every soul still waiting to be seen. Ibrahim didn't just change policy, he changed perspective. He reminded us that dignity isn't granted by rank. It's earned in the way we show up for those the world would rather forget. And Adama, he proved that no one is ever too lost to return, that a single act of being remembered can reignite a life. If this story moved you, share it, not for likes or views, but because someone out there needs to know they still matter. Because nations rise not only through elections, but through reconnection.